if you're not speaking, we will get to your questions either throughout the panel discussion or certainly at the Q&A at the end. And I think that is it. Feel free, any questions you have in the chat as we're moving forward, please just mention them. Just put them in the chat, and then we'll also, of course, have a Q&A section at the end. So from there, I will have our panelists introduce themselves, and I will start.
And then Keith said we have to pay that $3,500 off of it.
If you could please mute yourself if you're not speaking directly in the panel. Thank you. I'll start with Sean Slevin, please, from Swim Strong Foundation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Hannah. Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Slevin, the founder and executive director of Swim Strong Foundation. We're 16 years young as a not-for-profit here in New York City, and our mission is to reduce unintended drowning and water-based accidents. We do that in a couple of different ways, by actually teaching swimming skills. So we've taught them to 10,000 people plus pre-pandemic, and we're happy to be back in the water and starting those lessons again. We also have given over $1 million worth of free swim lessons to families that have needed that help. We have created an educational program called KNOW, K-N-O-W, Before You Go, which really looks at water a little bit differently, water in our daily lives, as opposed to recreational/swimming. So situational water, which is so important now as climate change unfurls around us, and also working on legislation to try to help really encourage that water safety education be part of our curriculum, because it's going to be part of our lives going forward. So proud founding member also of this coalition, and the work that we're all doing together, and also a new Rotarian participating in a global organization focused on drowning prevention and water safety. Thanks.
Thank you, Sean. Next, Kate Krause, who's with Rising Tide Effect.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Kate. I am the founder and executive director of Rising Tide Effect. We serve communities that historically have been underserved and are most at risk. We provide free swimming lessons and free water safety education, important distinction that all of us on the panel probably want to make. But yeah, so we're currently in Far Rockaway, and we're in Rockaway at the moment, and hopefully soon Starrett City. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. Aiden from La Rabea Collective, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Aiden Gabarel. I am the founder and executive director at the La Rabea Collective, also from Far Rockaway. We provide free surf lessons to historically excluded, and I have to say that exclusion, children of the Rockaway Peninsula, primarily on the east end of Rockaway, which is really, really underserved. We've been around since 2018, and last year we were able to get over 100 kids safely in the water and on surfboards. We've been with the Water Safety Coalition from the very beginning, and we're looking to do some great things this year and hopefully get some bills passed.
Thank you, Aiden. And last but certainly not least, Claire Hilger from the Civic Association.
Hello, I'm Claire Hilger. I'm a Rockaway resident of 19 years now. I'm secretary of Rockaway Beach Civic Association. I'm also a middle school art teacher. Let's see, really quickly, this is a cause that's near and dear to my heart. When I was a kid, I trained as a competitive swimmer, and it was one of my dreams to live near the ocean, and now I do. So I'm living the dream, but this is an issue that's so important to my community, and as part of the Civic Association, I think it's an issue that we cannot ignore, water safety. The Rockaway Beach Civic Association's mission is to protect and to promote the best interests of its residents and to promote and strive for improvement of all public facilities and services. That was a mouthful. But anyway, I think our biggest public facility is the beach. And so we want all our community members to be able to enjoy the beach safely, to partake in everything that being part of an oceanfront community has to offer. And that means we need water safety education in that piece. And so Rockaway Beach Civic Association has tried to also chip in the effort to get legislation in the works. And we regularly speak with New York City Parks Department and try to, you know, help in those ways as far, and I know this whole coalition has spoken with parks as well regarding signage, things like that. But I think we'll get into greater depth of that a little further in the discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and thanks all for joining tonight. So as you know, we've talked a lot about Rockaway already, and a lot of us are very rooted and working and living in Rockaway. But this is an issue that, you know, spans globally, locally, nationally, and our focus is certainly on the Rockaway Peninsula in New York City, but also extends to the city as a whole and also New York State. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. Part of our work is really thinking about what exists in both our local community and citywide and statewide, and then how can our work fill in gaps that maybe are out there. So for each panelist, if you can speak to the gaps that you're seeing in your own work, and then talk a little bit about how you're filling those gaps in both now and hopefully in the future. I'll start with Sean.
Thank you, Shanna. So for us, in the beginning, it was really about bringing swim skills, particularly to underserved communities. And we've been doing that, as I said, for 16 years. In the course of that work, I discovered just how few pools we actually had here in New York City. And I started to refer to our city of water as an aquatic desert. And when you think about that, it's really almost criminal that a city of 8.5 million people would have only 58 swimming facilities under the Parks Department. And of those 58 facilities, only 12 being swimming pools, the other being wading or sprinkler facilities. And of the 12 swimming pools, only 6 that are available year round. So you do the math. 8.5 million people into 6 pools. Oh my gosh, no wonder we're in such a crisis here. So I have been trapping every political elected official that I can in a corner to beleaguer them about the fact that we really need more infrastructure in order for us to create a pipeline of talent that will not only provide baseline swimming skills, but opportunities for us to train lifeguards. And we know we're in a bit of a crisis right here with lack of lifeguard or a pipeline for lifeguards, but even beyond that, into first responder work. So for example, for us, we've graduated over 225 lifeguards out of our program, and we have another 95 individuals who have joined the military, police, fire, emergency services technicians with swimming skills, and they're using those skills in their daily occupation. So we want to see more of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Kate, talk a little bit about gaps in our water safety system and what you're doing to fill them, please.
Sure. I think what really struck me was before I came into the nonprofit side, I was on the for-profit side. And as I expanded that business, I realized that most children in the communities that we were going into would never be able to afford the lessons. And that really stuck with me, so that when COVID happened and I left my job, I started Rising Tide to try to fill in that gap, bringing free, no barriers. We have a bathing suit, cap, goggles, everything you need to actually get a nice water safety education. We've seen just the total lack of education across the board. We're seeing it play out now in not enough lifeguards. We're seeing it in the drowning statistics. And we're really also seeing what looks like the city come together, try to do something about it, which is frustrating that it's taken this long. but it's great because we're finally here.
Thank you, Kate. Aiden.
I'll try and keep mine brief. Moving to Rockaway in the early 80s, 81 to be exact, I found out about the great history of pools that Rockaway had. My high school had a wonderful pool and swimming pool prior to me attending. The building that I grew up in had a pool in the back. By the time I moved in there, it was just like the tadpoles that were living in there. And a big part of that is white flight. When Black and brown people started moving out to the Rockaways, a lot of these facilities that existed, few facilities that existed, just fell by the wayside because management or whoever it was just decided that it wasn't as important for the people who had moved into the community. And that's what I grew up in. And that's why I'm going to be 52 this year, and I'm just starting to swim. Something I wanted to change when I started La Rubea, a lot of the kids that we get in, I'd say 75% of the kids that we get in to sign up for surf lessons don't know how to swim. And that's a problem because we can't take them in the water. We live in a litigious society and our insurance doesn't allow it, which brings up a big problem. The kids we're trying to serve, we can't even serve. So what we've been doing, just piecemealing it, kind of like we want to be where Claire and, Kate, where they are right now. We have to find pools wherever we can find them to take these kids to make sure that they can get, proficient enough in swimming so that they can, participate in something that they should be able to do because this is where they live. It's unfortunate that's what it is. I know there's a lot going on in the city right now. There are a lot of different issues, but this is a right. This is life and death. And, that's the way I look at it. Hopefully we can get a pool out here and get the majority of these kids or most of these kids who live in the community, these life-saving lessons that we need. And that's what La Rubea is doing. That's what all the organizations out here are doing right now. And, I hope that our elected officials are listening. We got to keep the pressure on.
Thank you, Aiden. I agree. Claire.
Hello, amplify Aiden. Okay, I think the map says it all. Like, look at that. The Rockaway Peninsula is gray. That means there's not one public pool, not one. So how do you live surrounded by water and there's nowhere to learn safely how to be in that water and enjoy that water? So Aiden said it well. And unfortunately, the history is really, it's just unfortunate, and we need to change that, and we can change it. And there has been, that's why this map exists now, because some council people are proposing a change in our city legislature to get pools like back. We need them back. Look at all those gray areas, Rockaway especially, it's also interesting too. I mean, like all this, it's not just interior land that has the lack of pools. It's all coastal as well. I think another gap has to do with how our beaches are guarded. And I don't want to go into a full-blown critique of lifeguarding in New York City parks and recreation, but there is a shortage. That is very true. But I also feel that it's been something that, as part of the Rockaway Beach Civic Association, I have tried very hard to communicate with lifeguards and get responses. And this is a problem. There is no way. I think there's things that can be done, because when the lifeguards are on duty, things go really well. They guard our beaches. They do a great job. But we have hot days. We have days where the heat goes long past 6 p.m. time when all the guards are down. So our community has come up with a lot of suggestions on how can we also have the city help us all stay safe as well, not just with our own individual education, but with services and with how things are managed, the management of our shoreline. So I think that's another gap where we'd love to have more transparency and more conversation with the city regarding that issue. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And just to provide a little context to this image here, we've been working on some statewide legislation on water safety, which we'll talk about momentarily. But recently, just in the last few weeks, some elected officials at the city level announced some legislation, and including the speaker, which is a big deal, is really advocating for a bill that would both fund free swimming programs, identify areas where there are no pools, look to start planning processes and fundraising for areas that need pools, get those pools in there. So that's a huge deal. And that's something that here at the coalition, we've been talking about for a long time, specifically in Rockaway, that it's a coastal community with no pool, but this is an issue citywide. So we're really excited about this legislation and really hope that it advances and passes. There are a few articles out there about this that you can find online, and we can also share those in the chat as well. But something we've been working for in the last few years is statewide legislation. And Sean, I'm sorry I didn't tell you this, but I'd love for you to give a quick intro on the legislation since you were so instrumental in drafting it. And we'll talk a little bit more about the legislation after you give a quick intro, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, thank you. Put me on the spot, but I'm happy to speak to it. Thank you, Shanna. So, the genesis of the legislation was just because we continue to see the drowning issues with very little change to the numbers. We just kind of what is the definition of insanity, but doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. So I thought, let's tackle it from a different end. We understand that there are a lot of barriers to swimming lessons. They're hard to find. They're expensive when you do find them. You need gear for it. There's just a lot of barriers. But educationally, we don't have those barriers. So whether or not, also combined with the issue of the climate changing, that also put a spark under me to really move this forward, because there will always be people that will never learn to swim for whatever reason, good, bad, or indifferent. But everybody can be educated about water safety. And when we talk about water safety, it's not really swimming skills. That's a piece of it, but it's a much broader quilt of different things that go into those components. So initially, when I drafted the legislation, it was as a mandate to mandate the training of education, water safety education in our schools. And it flopped. Quite frankly, it just flopped, because it turns out nobody likes a mandate. It wasn't funded, and for a host of reasons, it never got out of committee. And so, in speaking with my colleagues at the Water Safety Coalition, we said, let's still continue. Let's build on the momentum that was already established, because at least the good feedback that was coming both from the Senate and the Assembly members, that was, we really never had water safety so high on our minds as we did since the work that you in the coalition and others, the extended family, if you will, who are really pushing and advocating for this support. So we came back to Senator Adabo and Assembly Member Stacey Pfeffer Amato and asked if they would help us revise the bill. And what they suggested was that it come as a suggestion, a strongly worded suggestion, and removing the mandate. And that might just get us to the end goal. And that's what our hope is. So that is, and I just want to make sure that I have the numbers correctly. That will be the Senate Bill 2545A. Again, Senate 2545A. And the Assembly Bill would be 4846. And I do believe that we have actually a petition where you can show your support of getting these bills passed, and that will be placed into the chat. You'll put your information in there, and it will automatically track to your local assembly member. So I ask that you please go ahead and do that. And then, as we pointed out also just recently, through the City Council, they have also taken up the banner, recognizing that there has to be a change, that we need more infrastructure, that we need access to swimming lessons. and they are pushing forward on the legislation at the city council level. So this is the first time, at least in my experience, that so many people have acknowledged that this is an issue. It is an issue, as Aiden said, of life and death, first and foremost. It is an issue of justice, and it is an issue of rights, just human rights. All of us should know how to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And that petition is in the chat. Please sign it. Please share it with your friends and family. You do need to be a New York State resident. It's a state bill. But please share it far and wide. We really appreciate your support. And thank you to Sean for spearheading this legislation. And we really hope it passes this legislative session. So for the panelists, if you can speak to how, if this legislation were to pass, how would that change your work? How could that change things? I will start with Kate, since Sean just spoke.
Yeah, so if this passes, and we truly do build on the momentum Sean mentioned, I think that it's not only going to affect nonprofits like mine, but everybody. And by opening up these opportunities for swim safety and lifeguard training, we're only going to reinforce our core, which right now is lacking because of numbers. So this piece of legislation is really important and would be a big deal for New Yorkers.
Thank you, Kate. Claire.
Sure. I think what this will do will change a lot of minds about where they live. I mean, it sounds crazy, but there are a lot of folks in Rockaway who live here, and it's not because they love the ocean, you know, like I've heard people tell their children, like, it's dangerous, don't go in the water. Or there's a lot of like really interesting misconceptions, or go swim by the rocks, it's safer. Don't swim by the rocks, anyone, please, please, please. But things like just knowledge, common knowledge, to make your recreation, your walks along the beach, your summers safer, I think would be a huge benefit to our community, and to kind of changing the attitudes. Either there's like the folks that surf or swim and all that, and then there are those who are like, it's dangerous, don't do it, or they start wading in and full clothes and don't understand like the dangers of what they're doing and things like that. So some education would have a huge impact, I believe, in my community.
Thank you, Claire. Aiden.
Same as everybody's saying. For our organization as a whole, we take kids from 8 to 18. A big part of our cost, our overhead, is just trying to get, and something that I didn't know would be a problem when we started off, getting these kids swim lessons. It's extremely expensive to get a whole group of kids swim lessons before we could even get them surfing. That's the first thing. Provide jobs for the children that are here. Some of our older mentees who are now mentors have received they've gone out and got their lifeguard certifications. They have jobs for the summers where they live. They don't have to commute into Manhattan for $10 an hour. They can work right here on the peninsula and enjoy the beach like everybody else. One of the things that I saw a few years ago, I forgot what page it was on, it might have been the Far Rock shop guys who sell the hats and shirts, was them interviewing a guy who was about, 48, 49 years old, grew up in Ocean Village right here. And they were interviewing him, and he mentioned that he hardly's ever been to the boardwalk. He's gone to the boardwalk, but never touched the ocean. Can you imagine that? 48 years of your life, a stone's throw away from the ocean, and you've never set foot in it. It's just, that's really, really sad. I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. I've been near an ocean almost my entire life. 2 years in Atlanta. I don't know what that was about, but my entire life, either first near the Caribbean Sea and now here. And I just couldn't imagine living anywhere else. Why shouldn't I be able to enjoy that? I want every child who lives and grows up in Rockaway to have that, So yeah, if this passed, it would be amazing. Just getting these kids right into the pipeline, being able to just hop on a board like all the other coastal cities in California. Forget California, just go over to Long Beach, The kids are just swimming at like 2, 3 years old, but they have pools, they have access to these things. I want that for Rockaway.
Thank you, Aiden. So how can we get this thing passed? How can our audience advocate for this bill and just advance water safety issues in general? I'll leave this open to the panel. Whoever wants to jump in.
Well, I'll just start by saying, please sign the petition right away. That's the first thing. Call your local legislator, both at the Senate and the Assembly level, and now at the council level. Call them all. Express your support, express your desire for them to support this legislation. And also, go to your schools. We are doing some free assemblies around water safety in schools now. We have some funding through the city council. And I will tell you that I think there's just a lot going on in schools, but it's hard to get the principal's attention. I'm sure come May, our doors will be beaten down because people will realize, oh my gosh, here's the summer. But again, water safety is more than just recreational swimming skills. It's about understanding situational knowledge of water in all of its different manifestations, year round and including the extreme weather that we're experiencing now.
Agreed. I think it has to make sense for a lot of people, and they have to see what the benefit. I mean, I'm talking about, our political appointees. How does it make sense for them, and what will they be able to say, or they're getting out of it? There's a huge shortage right now where I have people from Oceanside and Long Beach reaching out to my organization to find out if I have kids who can go lifeguard over there, because there's such a shortage. And if something like this had passed 5 years ago, when I started off and these kids were in junior high school, we would have a ton of kids to be able to work the beaches here, to maybe go over to Long Beach or wherever else and work these beaches. And now, we potentially are looking at huge swaths of the beaches being closed because they don't have people to man them, to work them as lifeguards. And so if you put it in that way to whomever, this will benefit not only, it'll benefit the community, it'll benefit the children here. There's, huge job creation in something like this. Sean mentioned that she has people who join the military and the fire department, and all the swimming is needed in all these things, so job creation, however we need to sell it. The summer's coming, that's Rockaway's high point. There's going to be a lot of activities. We're all going to have a lot of events out on the beach, outdoors. Whenever we have something, we have to get as many people as possible, who live in New York, who are visiting our beaches, to sign up, to keep that pressure on. I think it was okay, the signatures we got last year. I think we can do much better. I think we could all do much better and getting a lot more signatures. Set up by the ferry. Have you ever seen that ferry in the summertime? How many people come off of it? Or Beach 67th Street? Get those signatures, and it's gonna have to be it. Just stay on it, keep the pressure on.
Can I, Shanna, share in the chat? We've had a good comment here from
Yes, please.
Elsie, saying she was looking to gather public support for the bill. It says, have you considered positioning it as a matter of both, one, social justice, access of the disadvantaged communities to healthy exercise that seems a birthright of residents of the NYC Islands. I like that, NYC Islands, Long Island, Brooklyn, Queens, etc. Two, an environmental justice, equitable access to recreation at the otherwise privileged shoreline beaches of New York State. I mean, obviously, I think it's all that. I believe, Aiden discussed some of that, and that's exactly what he's working on right now. I think share this petition everywhere, anywhere, anyone who's on this call, spread the word, share this as widely as you can. And I'm sure you may see some of our faces out in Rockaway. If our folks on the call are Rockaway residents, we try to table at events, do what we can. There's always ways to volunteer to help us do this work too. Spread the word about you know, water safety and how you can help. But definitely, I think, you know, with the city council bringing up the issue of lack of pools, we are definitely speaking to the point of it being, you know, about equitable access. It's not, we don't have that right now by any means. So this is absolutely something that, you know, we can go to our electeds with and say, you know, this is blatant, you know, how can we change this? And I'm in favor of us, you know, bringing more residents, you know, into the mix. I've seen helicopters land on the beach, you know, this happens. It's really unfortunate. So we don't want to see them. We don't want to use these cities' resources, right? This costs a lot of money to have a full rescue happen where you have multiple helicopters, you have all these first responders come, and this is just using city resources. Why don't we put this towards swim lessons, swim education, all these things? This is where, if we're investing that way, we don't need the helicopters coming and landing on the shore and things like that. That's my reading of Elsie's
very well put,
response.
Claire. Thank you so much. And Elsie, these are amazing points, and Claire mentioned this, but you know, we're a small group, and we've said it many times, we're very rooted in Rockaway, but this is a much broader issue than just the Rockaway Peninsula. And I think, did you say that you lived? Yes, you live in Rockaway Park, so that's wonderful. So if you're interested in getting involved with us, we're gonna make a call out for that towards the end, but feel free to get involved. We, yes, media campaign, that's something we're definitely looking to improve this year. That's not something that we got a lot of press about the bill from last year, and we really want to make sure that we're making far more noise in the press this year. It sounds like you might have some sort of background in the press, and if that's the case, we need you for sure. But if anyone's getting involved, we'll put a link in the chat for our website where there's a form you can fill out. And I'm also just happy to put my contact information in here as well if you want to reach out to us to get involved, because we've done a ton of tabling, we've done a ton of different events, and some virtual events like this, especially last year at the tail end of the pandemic, but we definitely need more support. So thank you so much, Elsie. I'm going to stop here because we have I have more questions for the panelists, but I also want to hear from our audience if there are specific questions that our audience has, and would love to know too if our audience is outside of Rockaway in any way, or others that are already in Rockaway, if there are any questions you have for the panelists at this moment. Feel free to, you can just unmute yourself for a small group or put them in the chat.
Actually, hi, my name is Diane. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Okay. You know, my son turned me on to Surfrider. We live in we go to New Jersey in the summer, but we live in Westchester County, New York. And he had been talking to me about like water safety. He's 15 now. And so I joined the Zoom to learn more, and he sent me the link to learn more. I'm kind of shocked by the increase in drowning and everything that you're sharing. My question is, in terms of the signatures that you got last year when this bill, it sounds like Idon, I think, was mentioning before, like it didn't go through. How many signatures did you get? Like, do you need, like, what's the number? Do you need like thousands more signatures? I'm just curious about the support that you need for the bill in order for it to go through.
We do need thousands and thousands of signatures. We need a few different levels of support. So we need everyday New Yorkers, of any, well, adults to sign this bill. We need organizations to support this bill as well, different businesses. It can be a nonprofit or corporation, a mom and pop shop, any business organization. And then we need additional elected officials to support the bill as well. Am I missing anything, Sean?
No, you're hitting it right on the head.
Those are the 3 levels we need. So there's a few different outreach strategies we've kind of used to engage those different support groups. And I would say for anyone just becoming interested in this, just pushing out the petition to your own network, whether that's professional, personal, both ideally. And then if you do have connections to elected officials that we can kind of get on board, that would be amazing. And then also, you know, support organizations. It doesn't have to be like swim-based organizations or environmental organizations. It can be Google, you know, it can be anything really. So that's the kind of support we're looking for. We do need thousands and thousands of signatures for the petition. Sean, do you have anything to add on that, or anybody?
Diane, did you say you were in Westchester?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm not as facile with all of the electeds all over the state. There's 150 assembly members and about, I don't know, 50 or so odd senators. So by all means, you know, find out who those people are and just talk to them. You know, get to their legislative director. That's the person that, you know, will have the ear of the legislator to discuss the various bills that are out there. So if we can secure their support, that helps.
That's very helpful. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you for Diane for joining us and for that question. And Claire mentioned this earlier, but this is a regular, you know, I put this up here, but this is a regular site in Rockaway every single summer, sometimes like once a week, multiple times a week, you know, especially there's a lot of change happening in Rockaway right now with a huge resiliency project with, you know, increased coastal protections and infrastructure that, while, you know, protecting the community in one way from extreme weather and storm events, does increase risk with wave action and riptides and things like that, making the water, you know, more dangerous in a lot of ways. So I would love to hear more from our panel or from our audience, but just one quick question for the panel. As New York City, there's been a lot of growth and opening up the waterfront to New Yorkers over the last decade plus, which is really great news. But in parallel to that, how do you foresee increasing water access and water safety working together in the future? Anyone can jump in.
So I'll just say that's one of the reasons that Swim Strong went forward on with the education, because we did see this. We looked at the triple threat that we're under here in New York City. The rising water levels, 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeters every year. The tropical storms and hurricanes that are coming in with much more strength year over year and frequency. If you think back 2 years ago, we had to go to the Greek alphabet to continue to name the damn storms. There were so many of them. And of course, our waterfronts being developed as never before in our lifetimes. So yeah, we're very, very, very concerned that this is going to lead to, you know, more people having access, particularly to open water, and really not even understanding that there's kind of different nature, behavior, and dangers depending upon the type of water that you're considering getting into. And so whether you're swim skilled or not, you need to know this. So that's part of our educational push, is to help people understand that. So again, we want to minimize risk. That's what we're trying to do, to get people to understand so they're not putting themselves in a situation of danger. After all, no one goes to the water and expects a bad outcome.
That is so true, Sean. Thank you. We have a question from Gina. How can community groups continue to educate our members and greater community about ways to get involved with the Water Safety Coalition? Let us know how we can help. Does anyone want to answer that? Or I can. Claire, go for it.
Well, if you live in Rockaway Beach or Rockaway Park, well, within the confines of we have a focus area. We're not all of Rockaway Beach, but we try to do as much as possible as part of this coalition to spread the word. Like Shanna said, I will be out, you know, at a table at more than once this upcoming few months, trying to get the word out. I know that my colleagues here host events. I know Kate did an amazing event last, it was spring, right? With with your mermaid. I loved your
Oh,
mermaid.
that was the fall, yeah.
That was fall. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was still warm. Okay. I was
Yes.
trying to like place it all together. So water safety education can not only be, I mean, save your life, it can be fun and enjoyable. And I would love for Kate to talk about that and shortly, but please, you can send an email to me, secretary@RockawayBeachCivicAssociation.org. If you want to, you can contact any of us. But talk to your electeds about the pools, make some noise about that too. Sylvina Brooks Powers, Councilwoman, she's, somebody this is a very important issue she's pushing now, which is amazing. We need to keep the pressure on with that. So yeah, I would go with there. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, Gina, thank you for your interest. We can certainly put you to work. So I would just encourage you to reach out. There's a lot of calls that need to be made to elected officials. Sean has a very in-depth spreadsheet with information to that end. So if your community members are interested in, making calls like that, certainly using your social media networks, personal LinkedIn, any of that stuff would be valuable in pushing out the petition. Are you speaking, Gina, specifically to Rockaway in terms of community?
Just in general, I run a female beginner surf club, and we have a lot of members that are always looking for ways to get involved in the community. So we have an event coming up on Sunday if anyone wants to bring a petition for people to sign.
Oh, that's great. Okay. That's Yeasty?
Yeah, Yeasty Boys.
Okay.
I'll email you, Claire, with more information.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Gina. Are there any other questions from our audience right now? Feel free to unmute yourself or just write it in the chat.
If I just may underscore one thing before we leave, and the pressure on the electeds, the good pressure on our electeds, our beloved elected community, is that really they pay attention to their constituents. And it's so important for you as a constituent to reach out to your elected, okay, because you hold the power of the vote. They're tired of seeing me coming. I live in one community myself. I can torture my electeds all day long, but broadly, we all need to be reaching out to our own elected base and mobilizing them. Thanks.
Thank you, Sean. I will just keep hitting the petition hard. I'm going to just re-put the petition here in the chat for you to share with everybody. And then I'll also, we need to do a little updating of our website, but if you want to look at our website for the coalition, you can always reach out to us there. There's a form you can sign with any additional questions, or if you'd like to get more involved, we'd love to chat with you. Are there any other questions from our audience? Do our panelists have any final thoughts, final suggestions, final hopes and dreams for water safety in New York City and beyond?
Shanna, I think you had one or two questions from the broader audience that may not have been able to get on the call tonight that came in.
Oh, sure.
Earlier.
Yeah, actually, Thomas has a
Toss
question.
one of those out.
Sure, yes. Let me get to Thomas's question first. Thomas thanks us for our time. We're happy to be here. Thomas is a Master of Public Health student currently in Manhattan and interested in the intersection of public health and water safety and surfing. How could you see educating those that are not in the school system, such as the older community, about water safety? Amazing question.
Churches. Seriously, churches. That's particularly for that community, absolutely. Getting into the churches and the civic organizations and the community boards. That's where I'd hit. And the older people are important because those are the grandparents, and a grandparent is not the grandparent of just their family. They're the grandparents of the community.
Right. I think you have to educate our whole families, right? Not just the kids. I mean, the kids are the way to start, but we need entire families. And I don't see why, Rockaway Beach Civic Association shouldn't host an event for adults, not just kids. And Sean, who's here on the board, has a curriculum about water safety education that happens on dry land. So we don't need a pool, these kinds. So to address Thomas's question, you can host there can be events hosted in locations where you don't have that pool, and you could learn a lot about water safety, not just as it applies to like swimming or swimming in a pool, but as Sean has mentioned, when it relates to oceans and rivers and extreme weather events and things like that.
Right. Rockaway has probably the most, one of the places with the most senior centers, nursing homes, civic associations. I have a Bayswater Civic Association meeting right after this. Those are all wonderful places to take these things to. You can meet entire families, and get the word out. One thing I did want to mention before I forget, this is all of New York State. So if you went to school like me in upstate New York, if you're, still have connections up at Albany State or Rochester, or you have family upstate, share this with them. We need electeds up there as well.
Thank you for underscoring that, Aiden, because we, are richer in our resources downstate. We need those upstate legislators too, sure. And it's a situation for them too. This is not just a New York City issue. This is an entire state issue.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Shanna, if there's one thing I could just say, I think it was the first question, like what can we actually do to get this legislation passed? And I think what we need to do differently this time around, one, I think the bill is more palatable, it sounds like, for the government, and that's good. But we have to keep or create really a buzz and keep it on the front burner for a while, not just right before May or going into June, or God forbid after a tragedy. Like, we need to be talking about it big time now, all the time, to get this up. I think that's when we'll see people wanting to sign the petition, looking to sign the petition. So I think the media side, the communication side, if anyone in the audience has a skill set there and would like to help the Water Safety Coalition advocate, that would be something that would be very helpful to us.
That's a great underscore, Kate. We need our media colleagues to help shine the light on this issue.
And just to Thomas's question, Thomas, when you asked that, what came into my head was really who the educator is partnering with in order to access that group of people. So Sean said the church, that makes total sense. I don't know if I'm making this up, but the Elks Club, I know there was an Elks Club where I grew up, things like that, where your target audience is there, having that relationship with the organization goes a long, long way.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, and I really appreciate communities in New York City. I find that there are certain audiences that are often excluded from community engagement processes, and the senior citizens is a big one. And I think
Shanna, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I can't no longer hear you.
Yeah, I second that. I lost Shanna's audio.
can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, here you go.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, my video is off. It'll be back on in a minute. Something's going on with my computer. I don't know where you lost me, but I just said to Thomas, I appreciate the question, because I do think we as a coalition need to think, we're very focused on a young audience and making sure this education is in schools, but you're absolutely right, that our work should kind of be a little bit broader than pushing this petition out to adults, in a very broad sense. We should be thinking, a little bit more about specific audiences as well. And it's a good point. as Sean mentioned, a few people weren't able to attend tonight and had sent in questions prior. I will ask this and open it up to the panel. Is there a difference between water safety?
Oh, I don't hear Shanna.
Sorry, Shanna, you dropped again.
No, can you hear me?
Yes, now I hear you.
Okay, I'm so sorry, everybody. I got a message.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead with the
Okay.
question.
Is there a difference between water safety and swimming skills? Someone sent this question in earlier. I'll leave that open to the panel.
Kate, you want to take that? You underscored it earlier.
The question is the difference between water safety education and swimming lessons, right? Okay, yeah, that's what I was hoping to underscore again. Drownings are 95% preventable. So having even a dry classroom, for example, Sean's know before you go, that information goes so far in keeping you out of harm's way that it has to happen. It has to be there. Even if you're doing swim lessons, you have to have that water safety education. Reaching everybody, getting everybody in the pool is obviously much harder and logistically not feasible in different areas of the state. But what is talking about the water safety upstate with the lakes, rivers, our ocean, things like that. That's free education, or should be free education, that should be accessible to everybody.
And education is knowledge, and swimming skills are physical skills. Yes, knowledge underlies it, but they're physical skills.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both. Anything else to add, Claire, Aiden? Okay. How can we make learning to swim a priority in every community? Oh, wait, sorry. Let me just jump in. Alexandra has a question. Are you planning on reaching out to schools? That is, visit the ESMS school and talk about water safety. Claire, the teacher, do you want to take this one?
Reaching out to schools. I work in Brooklyn. I don't work in Rockaway. And I also work at a private school. I'm not a DOE teacher, but I know Kate has definitely can speak to this. I have talked to my director about this, and they're very like, this is like kind of when we first introduced that we're pushing the legislation and we wanted it mandated. It just suddenly, like Sean mentioned, like the word mandate caused this like crazy uproar. And now we're saying we want these materials available. We want kids to we want this accessible to teachers and all this, this to be there. Because right now, as far as we know, there is not a curriculum in existence on water safety, on education and things like that. So I know there has been a push to have events in Rockaway, and Shanna, I know you said my name, but I feel like Kate knows most about that specifically in our area here.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, I mean, where to start on this one? It's really important. The key to this is actually getting the buy-in from the principal. The principal is understandably, up to here with just everything post-COVID. They're tight resources. They're short on time. They cannot fit much of anything else in. So getting through to the principal and then providing something that they can just kind of plug in is probably the only way it will be successful. One example I can share with you is at the Waterside School. They're located next to the Rockaway Hotel, which we swim out of in the mornings over the summer. And when Claire was referencing the mermaid, basically what happened was we brought the entire school to the pool, sat them around the water, and we went over the 5 water safety facts you must know as a New Yorker to stay safe. And we had the mermaid teach them. This was way more impactful than that spring just before the summer. I went into the school, had everybody in the assembly in the auditorium and tried to do the same thing. And I it didn't stick. But now with the mermaid, everything stuck. So we're kind of getting it down to a science. I know Sean is going out to other schools. I'm going out to other schools to divide and conquer. But again, you need the support of the principal.
And I would add the support of the families, because again, it's creating that pull. Because as Kate mentions, the principals are really overwhelmed. There's so much work that they have to do. So if the parents go to the principal and request this, then as we are doing our communications, it's going to ring a bell in their head and they'll say, oh yes, we really do need to bring this in for our families.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's me that put the question, Mission Alexandra. I will be speaking to both of the principals, middle school, elementary school. We have a meeting this week, and one of the questions that I will be asking is this: what is that they're going to be doing for to provide water safety awareness for our children, especially here in Rockaway community that, we have the water right here. So I will be posting that question, and hopefully if I have any positive feedback, I will let you know. Okay.
I appreciate that, Alexandra. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, last year we did do a little bit of outreach to various teacher associations, which sometimes is helpful. As, both Sean and Kate underscored, the principal support is really important. But a lot of teachers, they have families of their own, or, they really care about being out in the water and, all of those things. So they can sign it as individuals. We would love to have school support and various like DOE agencies support for the bill as well. But teachers can certainly sign it as individuals, even if the school isn't totally on board. So thank you for that question. It's really important, Alexandra. Just as we're wrapping up shortly, just a few more questions that came in. Why do we have drownings in New York City every year?
Claire, do you want to start on that one?
The drownings happen off when lifeguards are down. That's usually when it happens. So it's a hot day, say it's before Memorial Day, and we have a heat wave. Why don't we have a plan in place to get some eyes on the shoreline if it's 90 degrees on May 20th or something like that? It happens after 6 p.m. It happens when lifeguards are off duties. It also happens when people enter water that they don't realize what they're entering, like the bay, which has extreme tidal, currents and things like that, can be very dangerous. And if you are not an experienced swimmer, you don't know what to do, or you feel like you're getting, I don't even want to have to go into it, but it has to do with our conditions around the water around us. I mean, we often have very calm conditions, but we also often have really, really strong rip currents. We have these wonderful new, groins, rock jetties that are part of our shoreline that are going to help save our shoreline, supposedly protect us from storms and whatnot. But they also create a lot of current and a lot of moving water in different directions. And a rock will not save you. You can't crawl onto a slippery, sharp, wet rock. There's no safe place around that. And I think people enter rocks. Sometimes they think they can use it to help them or to brace them or something like that. And that's one of the most dangerous places to enter water. And I think people drown every year. It's educate, it's lack of knowledge. I think they've swam before, but they didn't realize, if I jump in now, I'm going to get taken by a current. When I witnessed somebody, I was really, really awful. And I'll share the story, but I saw someone drown. It was not safe enough for me to enter the water. I was a lifeguard at a pool as a teenager, but not an ocean, not at a beach. But the current was really strong that day. Surfers went looking for this person, and it was horrible. It's horrific. And it happens instantaneous. It happens fast if you don't know what's happening to your body and you go into a panic or something like that. So New York City has some pretty serious conditions out there, and people need to be made aware of them, how to recognize them. That's part of water safety education, how to recognize a rip current. Parks Department has some signs about that. In some places, we could have more. Kids could learn about it, how to identify that. But when there's no rip currents, it's okay. It is okay to swim there. There are safe places to enter the water, but not every place is a safe place to enter water. So I think those are some of the reasons that we have these incidents around the city.
Maybe somebody can help me with the right way to say this, but I think we use an expression, just because it's a beautiful day at the beach does not necessarily mean that it's a beautiful day in the water. So learning, to Claire's point about what to look for. I mean, the fact is that storms happening in Miami affect our rip currents here in New York City. So how would you know that? You just look out, it looks all perfectly fine. And then you go in and you don't even get to your knees. You're knocked off your feet and you're sucked out. Aiden, could you talk a little bit about the surfers and what you've seen in that community and how helpful they really have been? How many more people we would have lost without our surfing colleagues?
I think there's so much that you don't hear about on the news because it's prevented, right? And I think Gina was on a call here. I'm sure she's witnessed this before. I think she was present before. I've seen more people rescued by surfers than the lifeguards. And that's because I spent, the vast amount of time in the surfing area, what's supposed to be designated just for surfers. But if people come out and they don't know, they're coming from a different borough, or even if they do know, they're still going to enter the water where they're not supposed to. And I've literally seen, over the summer, almost once or twice a week, I've witnessed surfers pulling people out of the water. They use like Claire said, they use the jetties to go out, or they're just hanging out. And 1 minute they're, knee high and a wave knocks them down. And the next time you see them, they're all the way out. And I've seen surfers have to paddle out. If they can get to them, grab them, put them on the board and bring them back in. This happens all the time. I've seen kids come out and for whatever reason, some people are afraid to, teenagers, and they're out here. They'll just stand there and watch these kids. And I'm like, nobody's going to say anything. And I go up to them and I try and, I'm far removed from my teenage years, but I try and relate to them and say, hey, man, this is not a good idea. I've had friends who've lost family members out here. This is really unsafe. It doesn't look right, rough right now, but this is what can happen. And, they'll be like, oh, man, thank you, or whatever. They won't go into the water. But lifeguards are not there. Lifeguards are not in the surfing area, but that doesn't stop anyone from going into the water. The Parks Department tries, they're under-resourced. They'll come by once every 20 minutes, blow a whistle, try and pull somebody out. As soon as they're off site, the people go back into the water. It's a tough thing to see. I've actually witnessed, people drowning, and it's really, really hard to see a child being pulled out of the water like that. Somebody who went to the beach for the day and parent comes home from work and, they get a call that their child is gone. It's horrible.
Thank you, everyone. Elsie had some helpful suggestions in the chat, and you mentioned data, Elsie. Unfortunately, that's something that's difficult to verify for New York City is drowning data. The Parks Department and the Lifeguard Corps, as Claire alluded to earlier, it's a very non-transparent process in many ways, and that's something that the Civic Association and many other organizations and the coalition have been advocating for increased transparency with the Lifeguard Corps and the Parks Department. The Lifeguard Corps is a union, and it's a very, very powerful one. So to get accurate data about both life-saving measures, because there are, hundreds of saves every day, which is incredible work from the Lifeguard Department. But all of that data is not easily publicly available, and it's something that should change. But using data to advocate for our cause is certainly something we want to do more. Sean, are there any other, did I miss any questions that were sent in earlier? I think we're good.
Oh, I think there was one just to put out there to the group that I thought was interesting about how can we encourage communities to prioritize water safety and swimming skills. Because frankly, it's so much easier, right? If you think about it, talking about access, right? To slap a pair of treads on your feet and go down and throw some hoops, you know, shoot some hoops, than to go swimming. How do we change that dynamic? I don't have the answer. I was intrigued by the question.
I think that's where we see exposure become a catalyst. If people have been exposed to the water earlier on in life, learn to swim, whatever, they'll be participating in the recreation, shooting hoops, in this case, going for a dip. But unless they have exposure plus access, but exposure at an early age, I think that's just going to continue to be a bottleneck for people trying to enjoy what we have, the state has to offer.
I want to say too, it's been a suggestion I've made, but as I mentioned, it's difficult to have any dialogue with our lifeguards, but a junior lifeguard program. Many states have this. Why don't we get kids excited about this as youngsters? Like you said, exposure. Hey, what do I do? How do we practice like swimming in the ocean? You've got the pool down. Now we're taking the next step. So I want to throw that out there again. New York City Parks, junior lifeguard program. Why don't we do it?
Throw it out to the universe, Claire. Thank you. Thank you all. All right. Before I ask the panelists for any final thoughts and if they'd like to share any upcoming events or initiatives, are there any final questions from our audience? You've been a wonderful audience tonight. Thank you so much for your interest and support. Anything in the chat? Okay. All right, well, I'll maybe just one or two thoughts from each panelist, and then we'll wrap up with how you can continue to stay involved with us and updated. So Sean, I'll start with you, and then I'll let the panelists just fall in line after that with final thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Shanna. So I would just say that, we're kicking off Water Week here in New York City with our panel discussion, and this is in support too of the United Nations 2023 Water Conference that's happening here in New York, the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, which I will be attending, honored to be attending that. And there is a link, we'd love to have your support. It's to take a pledge to hashtag sweat for the number 4 water. And we're asking people to do this in support of really protecting water for future generations in simple ways. We can walk a mile for water. We can swim, bike, surf. Aiden shared with me that we can paddle for a mile for water. So please take the pledge and get involved that way in a simple way, because as much as in the UN where these heads of government are signing these big accords, it really is up to you and I as individuals to do the things that we can do to protect our water and make sure it's here for future generations. So I appreciate your support with that. And then just to save the date for those Rockawayans who might be on the call, May 15th is International Water Safety Awareness Day. And SwimStrong has been running a free program in our communities for a number of years now. Happy to be back doing that again since COVID is behind us. And our date for this coming year will be the 13th, Saturday, May 13th, Saturday, May 13th at Far Rockaway High School. And we'll be putting out some information about that. So hope to see some of you at that event. Thank you.
Just closing thoughts from my side. This crisis, this issue requires interorganizational and cross-sectoral collaboration. I think if you want to know if actual progress is being made in your community, then that's one of the things to look for. Who's talking about it and who's working together, because that's where we're seeing, you know, right now on a small scale, but where change is happening. And New York is not unique to that. Everybody needs to have that sort of collaboration, and we are seeing it here. The other piece I want to say is this stuff is common sense, and we do have both sides of the aisle agree. So it's almost like what's stopping it at this point? And that brings me back to, you know, that pot on the burner, that front burner. If you can help turn the flame up, the heat, and it gets more intense, especially leading into this thing potentially being passed, that would be tremendous. And I don't think it's going to happen without that. So thank you. And thank you for your time tonight, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I could jump in. Those are all great remarks. I just would quickly like to add that any education could save a life. And we want to keep our access to the waters. I don't want to take away any. I don't think the answer to keeping us safer is to staying out of the water. I think it's education, and I want more people to enjoy the water and be safe. So I want to keep our access, but I want us all to be safe. Thanks.
All right. Driving now. I'm late for my civic association meeting, but wrapping up, I just want to, you know, amplify what everybody else is saying. Even if we wanted to stay out of the water, because of climate change and things happening the way they are, we're going to be in a lot of these situations, whether we choose to or not. A few weeks ago, around the holidays, there was big flooding on my block. I almost lost a vehicle. I had no idea. A neighbor called me up and said, hey, you know, the water, I'd never seen the water come up so fast besides Hurricane Sandy, and my truck was almost underwater. And so it's not even a matter of avoiding the water or keeping people afraid of being in the water. It's going to happen. So we need to educate ourselves. We need to educate our children. Long after we're gone, they're going to have to deal with this. So just let's keep the pressure up. Like Kate said, let this not be something that's really, really, you know, hot for like May and June, and then it just falls by the wayside. Let's keep the pressure on. And thank you all for tonight.
Thank you to my amazing colleagues and tonight's panelists. I totally agree with all my colleagues. I think it's probably very clear, but we all clearly love the water with all of our hearts. And I think our goal is really to make sure that everyone feels comfortable in, on, or around it. We are a coastal city here in New York City. We're a coastal state. Our world, I'll quote Sean here, is becoming increasingly more watery, whether we like it or not. I like it, but there are a lot of dangers within that. So I think our goal is really just to make sure that people feel as comfortable as they can with every unique situation they enter into with the water, whether it be recreational, professional, or, you know, during an extreme storm, which is only increasing. So thank you all for your time. I'm gonna throw these links in the chat one last time. Please reach out to us if you have any additional questions or thoughts or want to get involved with our work. Please share the petition with everyone you know in your life. And thank you again for all of your time. And yeah, just keep the pressure on, as Aiden and Kate and Sean and Claire and I said.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.